In the first race of a new season, Connor Bloom and Jakob Abrams earned the top steps in their class podiums after an aggressive 30 minutes at Daytona. Now we head over 100 miles south of Daytona to the oldest permanent road course in the United States, Sebring International Raceway. It's race number 2 of the Porsche Owners Club Sim Racing season. Glad to have you along for the ride live on the Global Sim Racing Channel. I'm Devin Henry. With me in the booth is Nick Schmeg. Behind the scenes is our director, Joe Peak, using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. Before we get into our race details, let's take a look at how to get around Sebring with our GSRC lap guide.
Welcome to Sebring International Raceway. Home to the 12 Hours of Sebring, one of the most grueling tests in endurance racing, this is a track which has earned a fearsome reputation among drivers. The circuit itself is located on the southeastern edge of the city of Sebring, Florida, and was built out of Hendricks Army Airfield shortly after World War II. 3 layouts are currently in use, ranging from 1.7 to 3.7 miles in length. The longest course, which is perhaps the most well-known with it being the one used for the famed endurance race, shockingly still contains portions of the original airfield surface. It's this aspect which has become a signature feature of the track, making it extremely bumpy for racing. Sunset Bend in particular nearly shakes cars apart while they attempt to navigate the high-speed 180-degree corner. As you'd expect for the side of an airfield, there's nearly no elevation change over the course of a lap, but many of the curves are dramatically tall and unforgiving, daring drivers to glance them yet not hit them directly. Thankfully, places to pass are plentiful, including spots like the Hairpin and Cunningham. However, the many fast, sweeping turns creates a dilemma for car setup, since a vehicle that's made too stiff could wind up bottoming out on the onerous bumps. In the end, if you have the wherewithal to withstand the track's rough nature, you're likely to fare well. And since Florida fans almost always show up in huge numbers to witness this test of car and driver, you'll have plenty to impress at this legendary North American road course.
Welcome back to Sebring International Raceway, where you just saw a nice little track guide around here. Sebring International Raceway is certainly going to pose a challenge to these drivers today. So we take a closer look at the track here. It started out in right before 1950, in the 1940s during World War II as Hendricks Army Airfield. And then what has become now Sebring Regional Airport. That actually makes up a good portion of this track. That's the Ullman Straightaway. Which we'll see here at the very end. Now, it's a little bit of a gloomy day here at Sebring, but the completely flat track around here has made for some interesting personality, some interesting characteristics about it. Most notably, the bumps. Man, the bumps are killer here. A lot of the engineers that for IMSA and WEC that race here, they say that the 24 hours of Daytona is a breeze compared to the 12 hours of Sebring, just because of the difficulty of setting up a car to last through the difficult terrain that Sebring gives. The multi-class traffic always going to be a factor in a 30-minute race. But so like I said, a little bit of a gloomy day here at Sebring. We're going to have to see how that plays a factor in the 3.7-mile, 17-turn circuit here that we've all known and come to love as Sebring International Raceway.
A track that was made on World War II runways and some of the surrounding roads, and so these guys are going to be transitioning back and forth on top of different track surfaces. You can see as we watch Gregory LeFou go by, there's plenty of patches, there's plenty of sealing lines throughout this track as they're going to be moving surfaces. How difficult is it, Nick, when you get on top of one surface and you're trying to drive on top of another surface?
Oh, it's incredibly difficult. A lot of the turns here switch very abruptly from asphalt to that rough, bumpy concrete. And a lot of times you're going over the seams that were paved here on the asphalt. And, you know, until you walk this track, until you step and see those seams, it's not just like a crack that you see in a road. That is a giant gaping hole in the track that these drivers are constantly rumbling over. And, you know, with these Porsches, not just the GT4, the smaller GT4 Caymans, but also the GT3s, the 911 Cup cars, they're going to be struggling just a little bit to get over them, especially when you're making a pass.
And obviously so much can change. We talked about how aggressive Daytona was, and we'll take a look at your championship standings from just one race into the season. Well, we got Ty at top. Connor Bloom, your race winner, alongside Nielsen Lawrence, tied right now. But I mean, Nick, we're a single race, and it's anyone's race at this point. And leading practice standings right now, Theodore Framheim, I mean, it's a completely different track than what we saw at Daytona.
Yeah, it's completely different. I mean, Daytona is all about the draft, the slipstream, and the consistency. Here, I mean, the consistency is still going to be the name of the game, but survival is going to be another one that we just didn't talk too much about at Daytona. And we're seeing some of those familiar names up at the top of the board. Connor Bloom, he's sitting third place in the 911 Cup class right now, and Jakob Abrams sitting second place. But right before we get going here, let's take a look at some of the race details for today's event. This is round number 2 on the season, and they're following a very similar schedule to that of IMSA, but they're only doing 10 rounds here with the limited tracks that we've got. Open steps for this 30-minute race, and they've got a 30-minute open qualifying session where they're both running at the same time, which makes for some interesting situations. But yeah, the GT4s and the GT3s, we saw them cope together fairly well on the big, wide Daytona Superspeedway, but here at Sebring, things might be a little bit different.
Absolutely. And of course, we got to give a big thank you to all the sponsors who make this league happen. And of course, glad to have you here on GSRC. That includes Sunset Mortgage. Don't put your money in the bank, be the bank. Check them out today at sunsetcash.net. Octavio Tequila, celebrate now. For a great tasting tequila, go to octaviotequila.com and purchase today. And also Century Financials Consultants, making the rest of your life the best of your life. You can check out their website at centuryretired.com. Well, as qualifying continues to roll, we still have about 7 minutes left. We talked about the slipstream over at Daytona and, of course, the high banks when you're in the NASCAR corners. Now, there are some large parts of this track between the Big Bend and the hairpin, Ullman Straight. I mean, the Bishop that inherits, quote-unquote, turn 14 here, but with all those straightaways, does drafting really help here with those long straightaways that we have?
Well, the draft always helps no matter what kind of track you're on. Sebring is a track that it will help, especially just because of it's so flat, you know, the nature of an airfield. Most runways you're going to want to be flat in the world. But the big thing you got to worry about is the turn that comes right before the straightaways, like Le Mans, turn number 16, that comes right before the Ullman Straight. Sunset Bend. We might not see the sunset today, although it is about 7 o'clock p.m. virtual standard time out there. The Sunset Bend is huge. Drivers like to swing it in there. It's very similar to Parabolica over at Monza. Hard to take a line through there, and so many different variations of getting through there. Not all of them will end out pretty as you come across back on the main straightaway and throw it back into turn number 1.
We talk about how much of this track is going to be adapting because of how much you change those track surfaces. Right now, everyone qualifying, everyone apart for the most part, separate. Of course, you want to get on your flyer when there's no one else around you. But once you get onto this track and there's everyone around you, I mean, there's parts of Daytona where we were, I think I might have said last race 2 Mondays ago now, where, you know, in the NASCAR part, maybe sometimes going to the bus stop, you could be side by side. But here at Sebring, there's just not many spots where if you're going into a corner, that being on the outside of whatever corner that you're on is going to be at all helpful because of how flat this track is.
Yeah, I agree. There's not too many good opportunities for that. Turn 15 and 16 present a little bit of an interesting opportunity where you want to use as much runoff as you can to get a good jump. The biggest issue I think I see with Sebring, and I see it, no matter what car I'm driving around here, is the kind of, I like to call it the stadium section, turns 3, 4, and 5. Very tight, and those curbs are very tall, so it makes passing very difficult, especially if we get some of this multi-class action. They might get held up just a little bit.
And for you guys a little bit new to the Porsche Owners Club, now this is an actual Porsche club, mostly running in California. They go just about all the way north and south down California in the real physical world. They do time attacks, they do wheel-to-wheel racing, they do just about everything. And these drivers here are all real Porsche owners. So in our Pro-Am class, the GT3 Cup 991 series, now this is open to all POC members with an iRating above 1500, or we do see some pro racing drivers with real-life IMSA experience. And then they have the amateur class, the GT4 Club Sport cars. Now that's open to any POC member who happens to own a Porsche in real life and even runs, maybe even just some time trials. But there are guys out here that has hours beyond hours of experience racing wheel to wheel. And we have other guys out here who are more, they've done time attacks and time trials all on their own. But something interesting talking to Matt Hollander, who's helping lead this league for us and chatting with us, is that on Thursdays they have an actual racers clinic. So in real life what they do is they will get some new drivers who maybe want to go into the wheel-to-wheel racing, and they'll teach them some stuff of whatever track they're at, and they'll put them side by side with the cars and teach them how to do that. Well, for new racers here in the Sim League, they actually do the same thing, where on Thursdays they will take the new racers or the inexperienced racers and they will put them side by side on the track and teach them how to race here. So the majority of the racers that you are going to see here tonight are drivers who, even if they don't have a lot of real life experience, they are trained here on the sim through this amazing owners club.
Yeah, a lot of these drivers, some of these drivers are students, some drivers are even teachers in the real world. Some drivers, like we're watching right now, Gregory LaFougue, he races over in the IMSA Michelin Pilot Challenge with Connor Bloom. Bloom, who sits just one spot behind him, actually, I believe races for Turner Motorsports over there. So some very cool opportunities that these drivers have been given. Some of these drivers, I wouldn't be surprised if they've actually seen Sebring in the flesh. If they've raced here before, they'll certainly have an advantage over some of these drivers that station themselves mainly out west.
And boy, we had a heck of a lot of fun watching Connor Bloom go at it with Gregory LaFougue 2 weeks ago at Daytona. These two are actually former teammates at Beamer World. They're no longer teammates, though, in the real world. But, man, we saw a lot of between those two in this pro category, if you will. And we're going to have 13 entries for that category driving the GT3s. Meanwhile, in the GT4s, you talked about how this lap traffic and coming up on slower cars at a track like this, even 3.7 miles long, it's inevitable, and it comes down to being able to navigate around and also a little bit of give, a little bit of take.
Yeah, you got to be, I mean, you can talk about patience as much as you want, but when you have drivers with this much experience and, you know, I hate to beat the dead horse, but the fact that we've got a 30-minute race, patience, you've only got so much of that to keep track of. It certainly causes for some chaotic situations on track, and to keep up for those of you at home with all of that chaos, if we can't cover it on screen, we've got gsrc.tv. You can pull that up in a new tab or have it on a tablet or phone in front of you. That's some live timing and scoring, great statistics and numbers over there to help follow along better with the action, and certainly helps follow along better with qualifying, as we're seeing some drivers put up some faster and faster times. We still see Theodore Framheim right now up at the top of the board in the Cup class, the GT3 class, and Alan Stad leading the GT4 class, although he's sitting in the pits right now. We see Ron Palmer out on track right now in the 29.
And of course, these laps, when you're looking at the GT3 category, still over 2 minutes. The fast time for Framheim right now is a 2:02, 2 minutes and 2 seconds. Then you start to move back down and you take a look at the GT4s. They're running at a 2:12, and so even at their fastest, a 10-second differential. I mean, at that point, you can say that within 20 laps, the front of the GT3 class is going to catch the front of the GT4 class, or GT3, excuse me.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're starting to see the sun peek out just a little bit here, it looks like, or at least in the part of the track I'm watching. It looks like back on screen, Paul Newton, he's back in that shade. Coming back out on track, using up all the track limits here as much as they can. Just 20 seconds left to try to put a time up on the board. Very close times there, but I'm noticing about 7 seconds actually separate our GT3 class from first to last, and about 8 seconds in the GT4 class.
And just looking up front, LaFougue less than a tenth of a second behind Framheim, who will earn the pole here at Sebring. And we talk about the weather. We'll see what that does to the track surface. The track temperature might be a little bit lower with that cloud coverage. That can bring for a little bit more grip in the track. But as the drivers finish their laps, as Framheim and LaFougue are off the track, we only have a handful right now of GT3s left out there, including Connor Bloom, and you see Michael Bolton out on track right now as everyone finishes their final laps here on the track. Nick, if you kind of explain to the audience who might not know a ton about road racing, because it is similar to oval and to road, but when that sun, if it does come out, how is that going to change a track surface with multiple kinds of textures?
Yeah, well, the fact that we have so much cloud cover and the fact that it's, like we saw earlier, about 75 degrees on track, that's the same temperature as the ambient temperature, and that happens very seldom in racing. The fact that the air and the track are the exact same temperature. Very chilly day, at least for Florida, and you know, a lot of these drivers they're gonna appreciate that extra grip, especially with these cold tires to start out this 30-minute race here at Sebring.
Absolutely, and of course, as the tires continue to wear, but they also heat up as well, and it just all comes down to having that open setup. This is a league where you get to create your own setup, and it's just being able to know how to set up your car where you can stay in the race early on, but still have a car that can win the race when you get to the end. Not having a setup early on could lead you, I don't know, 10 seconds more so behind the pack as you come down to the final 5 minutes of the race. And boy, it just comes down to how important it is to make a proper setup for a track like this today.
Certainly does. We see Jakob Abrams come around for his final lap. He was last week's winner at Daytona. Like you mentioned, it's a very different track. Paul Newton as well coming across the line. I don't see anyone improving, though. It looks good for Alan Stad, sitting up there in 14th place overall. That's first place in his GT4 class.
So the leading time in the GT4, a 2:12.065. Your leading time in the GT3 class, a 2:02.455. And so we mentioned time separated, but still very close within their own categories. And it looks like we are going to be ready here in just a few moments to finalize our starting grid. And yep, that's going to be it. So while we prepare to get on the grid, here is your starting lineups for tonight's Porsche Owners Club race at Sebring. On the pole, Theodore Framheim, alongside Gregory Lafougue on the front row. Connor Bloom and Rennie Bruns will make up row number 2. Nielsen Lawrence and Thomas Boileau in row number 3. Matt Hollander and Bayan Salehi in row number 4. Eric Oviatt and Michael Bolton round out your top 10.
Your last 3 GT3 drivers here in the field today are Jim Slavic, Jad Duncan, and Dominic Cicero. Now, after that, you've got 14th place overall, which, like I mentioned before, is first place in that GT4 class, the bigger class here, the AM category. It's Alan Stad, Paul Newton, Jakob Abrams, Michael Ost in the first 4 spots there. Then BJ Fulton, Doug Baccinone, and Michael Roban in the top 20.
Yeah, we got more cars, guys. Jonathan Burrell and Brian Swift up next. Peter Laudier and Ron Palmer, the president, follow them. Mark Rondeau, Dustin Heidel, Chris Lewis, Ken Balkenberg, Daniel Furman, and John Momeyer round out your top 30.
And just 2 drivers after that, it's Patrick Flanagan and David Keeter, who were just a couple of seconds off the pace there in qualifying. They might not have been able to get as many laps in as they wanted to. We'll have to see if they're able to make their way up through this pretty thick field here at Sebring.
And the field will get an entire course layout, if you will. They will pace the entire 3.7-mile course. And while they are doing that, we will give thanks to the greatest country in the nation, and we'll do that by playing the Star Spangled Banner, our national anthem. Always love to hear that anthem, and now about ready to wave off these cards and get the green flag flying for the Porsche Owners Club race here at Sebring. Now also a little bit of relief to be able to watch some cars around the track, even if it's just in the virtual world, as some of these guys, even in California, not quite able to get back to regular racing, whether it's with fans or whatever the case may be. But as we pace around here at Sebring, Nick, what's your final thoughts here on the keys to taking home this race after 30 minutes?
You've got to survive. You've got to keep your head down and your elbows out. I think that's the best way to get around here. And you just got to be confident in yourself and in your car and your setup. You've only got 30 minutes. There's no time for mistakes. There's only time for success.
It feels like forever when you're driving, but by the time that race ends, it feels like, man, that was just about 5 minutes. But yeah, like you said, you got to be on top of your game. Elbows up, so hopefully you were working on those triceps during quarantine. But hey, not going to be much more different than Daytona when it comes to probably about how aggressive these drivers are going to be when we reach this green flag in 30 uninterrupted minutes of just going at it.
See all these drivers trying to get their tires up to temperature. They know that it's a cold day out there. They're trying to swerve and get all the dirt off those tires as well. Any slight advantage they can get here on this long pace lap. 3.7 miles around the 17-turn monstrosity.
Yeah, and luckily here they actually have the time to do that. At Daytona, it was only a half course pace lap, and so now you have the actual time, and then there's no banking to do it on, so you just have the flat track all the way around to do it.
Flat track, but lots of gouges in this track. Lots of bumps and dents down in that tarmac. Literal tarmac, former runway.
Yes. She's got a personality on her. 75 degrees in the air and somehow 75 degrees on the track in mostly cloudy conditions. Race number 2 of the Porsche Owners Club Sim Racing League. We're about ready to get things underway. Theodore Framheim and Gregory Lafougue will lead the field coming down to the green flag.
They've still got to make it through Sunset Bend. That'll allow them to get a good look at that turn when they're all bunched up together. It'll look a whole lot different when they're going about 100 miles an hour into there.
Oh yeah, basically just a 180 to bring yourself back to the front straightaway, to bring yourself back across the line. Off the corner, the pace car waves off, and we are green at Sebring. Already bouncing off the wall, they're 5-6 wide. Boy, this is going to be a lot of fun going into turn 1. There goes Lafougue, turned around by Bloom. Another driver, the 29, goes around, and we already have a mass amount of chaos before we even reach turn 1.
And the same for the GT4s, who now have to make it through the carnage. They're going to stack up in the junkyard as well. Problems for them getting through. Alan Stad, he's going to be lead. Actually, no, he's going to be losing a couple of positions at the start. Michael Ost went from 3rd on up to 1st. Jakob Abrams jumped Alan Stad as well. Paul Newton fell all the way back to 4th.
An incredible beginning to that race. And somehow we're going to keep this thing going. Of course, there's not really any full course cautions here. So as we watch it along, Michael Ost right now 1st overall in the GT4 category, but 9th overall in the race right now. That is how many cars from the GT3 category just bit the dust there in that very first corner.
Yeah, that's 5 of them gone just like that. We're only down to 8 GT3s left out there running right now, or at least running up for contention in front of the GT4 leaders. It's all being led, though, by Teddy Framheim, who did have a blistering start, and he got away from all the chaos behind him.
I guess that's probably the key point. No matter what you're doing on iRacing, you want to be in the lead, because stuff like that happens. We're second from behind you. All crashes, well, the leader's just fine, but going over some of those drivers who did crash, Gregory Lafougue, Connor Bloom, Renning Bruns, Nielsen Lawrence, some of your top drivers from Daytona have a huge hole to dig out of. They can get a fast repair as we are eventually in this over 2-man track going to get back to where you can get onto pit road. But boy, I tell you what, it's going to be a tough ride on over to the pits. Thomas Boileau right now currently in 2nd. Matt Hollander trying to pounce on him though.
Michael Ost is loose out of Le Mans. He's going to throw the lead away in the GT4 class. That's going to hand things over to Jakob Abrams, last week's winner at Daytona. Unbelievable stuff here at Sebring on the opening lap.
Lap 1 more chaotic than it was at Daytona, and we can see some of these faster cars trying to make their way through this category. Right now in front of LaFou, coming off, got on the grip strip a little too much, and there goes the rear end.
So easy to do that. They do have, like you mentioned, actually they have 2 fast repairs here. We might even see some of these drivers today use both of them. It's still going to set them back quite a bit. Eric Oviatt also fell out of the GT3 running. He had a big spin. Gregory LaFou, though, despite being wrecked on that first lap, he's fought his way back up to 7th overall in class. Impressive stuff from that real-world driver, despite a pretty bent-up number 19 car.
And we saw LaFou at Daytona lead just about the entire race, but then a little bit of contact with the driver here or driver there, and just a little bit of bad luck in him where he ends up finishing outside the top 5 at Daytona. And boy, qualifying second, it looked like he was going to have an opportunity to win here today, and I guess he still's got that chance because he is still climbing through the pack with minimum damage, just a little bit on the left side, the driver's side, that hood.
Yeah, I think not too many cars out there without a scratch left on track, except for our leaders, which continue to be Teddy Framheim in the GT3s, and now it's Jakob Abrams in the GT4s. Abrams has just a little bit of a lead over Alan Stad. It was about half a second. Now he's opened it up to about a full second, it looks like there.
And we saw momentarily a flash of pink as we were watching Jakob Abrams in 9th. It looked like Connor Bloom made his way to 9th place, and something went really wrong on that number 95, and he finds himself all the way back in 15th, dropping 6 more positions. Boy, this is going to feel like 2 hours to some of these drivers.
Yeah, Connor Bloom had a spin himself. I believe that was through turn number 5. That was quite a long time ago, but he was certainly pushed back quite a bit by that. A lot of these drivers, I mean, they have those 2 fast repairs. Oh, there's a car flipping down the front straightaway. It's Matt Hollander. Oh my goodness, what happened here?
Goodness gracious, that was a violent looking crash here. It's tough to wreck like that at a track like this where there is no banking at all.
He clipped the wall, it looks like, that right side wall. It's the pit wall. Trying to get as much track as he could. That wall separates just a little bit. It kinks to the right, just a slight fraction of an inch. He knew that, and oh man, he almost came up and hit the bridge.
Trying to get a draft there on Bolu and ends up having to take it for a fast repair. I think he towed as well. I'd be surprised if that thing landed on 4 wheels, much less you want to drive around with a car that beaten up around this entire 3.7 mile track.
Yeah, absolutely. That's going to allow Michael Bolton up into the podium after starting, how about this? Starting in 10th place, he came all the way up to 3rd. Incredible drive for him. And we're only just a couple of minutes, only about 6 minutes into this race.
So already, we're pretty intense here at Sebring for race number 2 of the Porsche Owner Sim Club Series. Gregory LaFou now trying to make his way back, catching up to Bayan Salehi. Closing on inside 3/10 here as they continue to battle through, and LaFou in the top 5 after all that chaos on lap number 1. Turn number 1, I guess I should say.
Yeah, the attrition has really gone in his favor. That looked like a start like we see over in the oval side of things at like Pocono Raceway when they were 6 or 7 wide. Doesn't work out too well here at Sebring. And another issue that these drivers are actually dealing with here early in this race is traffic already because of all those drivers that had to take a tow to the pits. A lot of fresh new cars after the fast repair that they've got are coming out in track and intermixing with these front runners.
So as if it wasn't chaotic enough once these classes start to mix, but now you're also going to have drivers on fresher tires. It's not going to be an outstanding game because of how few laps they were able to put on those tires, but still, we have very different machines out there. I mean, you could essentially categorize 4 different classes, if you will, a GT3, GT4, and then a beat-up version or a fresher tire version of those 2 as well.
It really is. We've got a little bit of a battle back for 5th place in the GT4. That is BJ Fulton back there after starting a couple spots behind. He's had a pretty quiet start to this race, actually, if you could believe that. He's trying to catch Jonathan Brell as they make their way around Dustin Heindel. See, this is one of those instances where they've got that beat up GT4 to get around despite being in the same class. You're right. It's almost like it's a whole nother class of car. Those cars that they don't want to spend the time in the pits, even though it's an instant fast repair. They don't want to spend the time making down the long pit road here at Sebring. And just a short race, a short sprint race, they think it's better off to stay out there and keep that track position. But Jonathan Burrell pulling away because of that.
Fulton, a 33-year-old astrophysicist working at NASA. He just started sim racing in May and right now running top 5 in the GT4 category.
Yeah, pretty impressive for Brian Swift. He just got around Dustin Heindel there. He's trying to chase down BJ Fulton. If he knows anything about rockets, and it sounds like he does, he might have to turn those afterburners on.
No kidding, but right now, hey, can't complain too much with the top 5. Still a lot of this race to go, not even 10 minutes into this race. And just looking up and down our positions right now, Franheim right now is just absolutely blowing away the rest of the GT3 category.
And another one I'm keeping my eye on, Devin, is Gregory LaFougue. Remember, he spun in turn number 1, lap number 1. He's already looking at the podium in class. Michael Bolton is the driver in front of him who, I don't know if there's much he can do in that 127 car except throw his hands up and do the best he can to stay out there in front of him. He might get a little bit of an advantage here as the track tightens up through this middle section, but oh no, Gregory's just too fast for him. He's going to get underneath him. No, can't complete it yet as they get around Chris Lewis, the GT4 car.
And of course, these slower cars are going to make absolute chaos for some of these drivers because in some ways, slower cars are picks, but in other ways, they turn into walls for that driver in front. But hey, you mentioned Gregory LaFougue right now up to 4th. He is on a mission. And boy, he's driving pretty hard into these corners.
Yeah, he's got nothing to lose. He's already got a little bit of damage on the left front of that number 19 Porsche 911. But Michael Bolton, yeah, he seems to maybe be able to pull away on the straights just a little bit, so maybe a little bit of aero damage there hurting Gregory LaFougue. Like I mentioned, that front left of his car got clipped, got tagged there on the opening lap.
These two about 15 seconds behind your leader right now, overall, obviously, and in this GT3 category. Closing up to the rear bumper here, just not enough. I think that's a great point, Nick, because even right now, should be able to get a little bit of a draft. It just doesn't really seem to close in. It looks like where he's closing in is more so on corner entry.
Yeah, that draft is the only thing keeping him in there. It's allowing him to brake just a little bit later and close in. It really binds them together, but then Michael Bolton, he's able to get on the loud pedal just a lot quicker, it seems. But that slipstream, it just might be a little bit too powerful for Bolton's own good. We'll see if he's able to do anything down here into Sunset Bend. He can throw the car down in there. He's going to take a little bit of a later apex, it looks like. See what kind of run that gets him on the pit straight. Oh, it looks like it's going to be a good one.
The 28-year-old stunt driver trying to hold off a pro here in the Porsche Owners Club Sim Racing League as we come down to 19 minutes and 15 seconds to go. LaFougue now looking to the inside, and he gets plenty of room coming around here through Sunset Bend.
Good job by Ron Palmer to get out of the way there. In the GT4, he was so far out of the way, I don't even know if we picked him up on screen, but yes, promote Gregory LaFougue back to the podium. That's got to be a scary sight for Teddy Framheim and Thomas Boileau to see in their relative on screen, knowing that Gregory LaFougue was pretty much last place at one point early in this thing.
LaFougue still has 8 seconds to pick up to the second position. We now look back into 5th place in the GT4 category. BJ Fulton right now trying to close in on Jonathan Brell, and hey, Brian Swift is closing in behind him as well.
Yeah, Fulton doing a good job at staying out in front. And I think one of the reasons he's staying out in front is because he's being able to follow Jonathan Brell right now. It's always nice when you can focus your attention out your windshield instead of your rear view mirror. But now we're going to see a little bit of a dive for Brian Swift. He's going to back off just a tad bit.
Taking a look out the rear end of this Porsche. Not necessarily similar to what you see in the rear view mirror, but you know when you have that black and blue car behind it, you can see that in the mirror. So when you're in the car, obviously not a ton of lane choices that you want, but how much are you paying attention to the rear view mirror, especially on a lot of these pieces of the course, like the hairpin, for instance? Can you really be even looking in the rear view mirror in parts of this track?
That's what your peripheral vision is for, but the problem is that a lot of times that's all you can focus on. Just mentally, you're more focused on losing a position or trying to prevent from losing a position than you are from gaining one. Right in front of him, that's Duncan, who spins a little bit of a Code Brown moment for those two drivers, and that's going to allow Brian Swift to reel him back in as Fulton got on the binders.
Yeah, Duncan, part of the GT3 category, trying to make his way through some of the GT4s, and probably was a large part of some of those wrecks that we saw, and man, rear end comes out on him, and now he's got to go through those drivers once again.
Already about halfway through this race, we've completed about 13 minutes of racing on track action so far.
And as we continue to go through, Franheim still leading overall, and in that GT3 category still has a tremendous lead over Boloy. And then Lefouque still 17 seconds behind that leader as well. Jakob Abrams still your leader right now in GT4 racing, and he has accumulated a 3-second lead. And hey, Lefouque has now moved up an issue for Boloy.
We're going to take another look at this to see exactly where and how this happened. Gregory Lefouque, second place in the Cup class. Let's see if we can find this. Oh, he had a little bit of help. It looks like Boileau made a mistake. Just heated up the rear end of that car a little bit too much. Lefouque, that allowed him to close in and easily snatch up that position. He's got a long mountain to climb, though. Teddy Frameheim, 17 seconds in front of him.
Yeah, Frameheim, right now, it looks like he is just on rails. Obviously, Lefouque is on a mission coming through the pack, but still has 17 and a half seconds to make up in 15 and a half minutes. Now looking back, this right here is second and third place in the GT4. It's Alan Stad and Paul Newton going at it. Newton in the blue, Stad in front of them in the orange.
Yep, both these drivers with great starts in this race. Actually, I believe they both started up on the front row, and they kind of got shuffled back to third and fourth after lap number one, trying to avoid all that Cup traffic after their wreck. You can see just those cars bouncing over the bumps here, doing the best they can to get it back on the acceleration without losing control. You've really got to work these cars hard, and that is exactly what we're seeing right now from Paul Newton, trying to close in on Alan Stad. Gets a little bit better of a corner apex there. Now this is where they have to swing it wide to get onto the long straightaway. Crucial that they nail that. Oh, and Newton's going to go just a little bit wide, had to let off. That's really going to help Stad down into sunset.
And you can just see that white speck up ahead. Abrams is in view of both of these drivers, and so obviously they have a target set right now. They are about 4 seconds behind the leader, but right now you got to think that Paul Newton has all on his mind. Abrams, but first got to get around Stad.
Yeah, absolutely. He's being able to draft with him a little bit, but like we mentioned, it's not like Daytona where we saw drivers working together to catch one driver who was all by themselves. Alan Stad just has to work to get back up there, but Abrams has been pulling away from him this entire race ever since he took that lead. Abrams, like I mentioned earlier, looking for 2 wins in a row. What a way to start the season that would be.
Absolutely. Still issues on some of these drivers. Swift right there getting turned around, put a little bit of too much gas on corner exit there and turns right around.
Well, we had been watching him work BJ Fulton for 5th place pretty much this entire race so far, and he finally had the opportunity to get in underneath him. It was down into turn number 1, but he found out that there wasn't enough grip down there, especially when he got back on the gas. Just going to loop it by himself and hits that Armco barrier just a little bit.
Doesn't look like too much damage on there, but definitely a lot of lost time. And even you could see in the track where a lot of that rubber was on entry and on exit. He was on some of that lighter pavement where there just wasn't any rubber. Coming down to the 13-minute mark here, left at Sebring now. And as we have continued issues for the GT3 category, and including Bloom here gets turned around and into the wall.
Oh, Connor Bloom was trying to make his way back up through the field. He was trying to get a pass on Eric Oviatt.
And he's
down
upside
the Ullman
down.
Straight. Yeah, he got turned hard here. They were racing very aggressively together. We'll see here, we ride on board with Oviatt. Both of these drivers trying to make their way back up through the field, and it just did not go well. Oviatt had a huge run here. Looks like, I don't know if he was trying to just get an advantage or what. So hard to tell. Oh, boy.
And then he has this thing drifting. It looked good and lost it right there and ends up on his lid and has to tow back to the garage.
Yeah, both of those drivers went for a wild ride. Bloom is going to turn out to be on top, though, because he never completely flipped. Oviatt did end up on his lid, like you mentioned.
And just like that, with all the issues here with GT3, Jakob Abrams is right now 8th overall, leading the GT4s.
Yeah, it's incredible. He's only got 7 drivers in front of him, 7 cup cars ahead of him. Attrition definitely played a factor in today's event, and probably will so in the rest of the 12 minutes we've got here.
Boy, it's just hard to keep a car clean for 30 minutes no matter what you're running, and on such a difficult track like Sebring, especially on a first lap or first corner where so many cars are looking the other direction, just tough to do, including Teddy Framheim right now has extended the lead to 16 seconds over Lafougue, continues just to navigate his way through lap traffic with 11:10 to go here in this race.
If we look at just a little bit behind, we'll see actually quite a ways behind, because this is back in the GT4 class. Jonathan Brell is fending off BJ Fulton. Now remember, BJ Fulton was in a battle with Brian Swift, and he wasn't really able to focus his full attention on Jonathan Brell. But now that's changed, because after we saw Swift go off in turn number 1 just a few moments ago, you know, there's nothing else for Fulton to focus on except getting around Jonathan Brell, and it looks like that 277 car of BJ Fulton has got the pace, at least in a couple sectors of this track. Brell going a little bit wide here, maybe being a little bit aggressive here defensively, might be able to pull away. As we're seeing now, it looks like he's able to open that gap back up.
This is the battle for 4th here with the Caymans in the GT4 category. In front of them is Paul Newton, Alan Stad, and of course we talked about Jakob Abrams right now in the top 10 overall so far through, coming down 20 minutes through tonight's race at Sebring.
You see they have that big flat curb out there. Not all the curbs here at Sebring are friendly. That one certainly is. Provides a little extra grip to get back out on the track. Get a big run down the Ullman Straight here. And oh, look at how Fulton's going to launch himself into Sunset Bend. Gets down on the inside, and he's got a lot of grip down there. But Brell able to get back on the gas just a little bit quicker because of that. So not too much time gained there for Fulton.
Coming by the line, still trying to figure out who's going to come away with that 4th position here in the GT4s. But right now, that red and black car of Jonathan Brell certainly trying to keep that to himself, as he still has Paul Newton quite a ways in front of him by 9 seconds.
Yeah, and this is the closest battle on track. Things are pretty well separated back in the Cup class. So we'll keep our eyes here, see if Fulton can reel him in at all. Oh, sounds like Alan Stad. He's under fire all of a sudden from Paul Newton. He had a slip up himself. So now Stad's got to worry about this spot.
Absolutely. Stad in the black and orange, Newton in the blue right behind him. See him peeking down here, down the straight as we continue to ride on through here. And with all this flat surface, what do these tires feel like right now, Nick? As you're trying to hunt someone down, how do these tires feel on this course?
It's not great, but it's what everyone's dealing with right now, because there's no way you're thinking about conservation, especially with the aggressive start we saw from all of these drivers. So you just got to work this track and work this car as much as you can. Not only do these cars tend to have a decent tire fall off, but this track, of course, you would have them at Sebring, and you know, they're just trying to keep as much traction and as much momentum as they can out there. You see Paul Newton he might not, I mean, he's been given a bit of an opportunity to close in on Stad, but I don't see an opportunity for him to draft up alongside of him, or not necessarily draft, but at least get up alongside of him and try to make that pass. Stad's going to go a little bit defensive, it looks here. He feels threatened for this second place position.
Newton looking on the outside as you look out the passenger windshield, but goes way too high, and that's going to give Stad a little bit more wiggle room.
Stad went very low there himself as, man, Newton found the tiny strip of grass out there. That's how wide he went. And you can see just on screen just how much time he lost there.
Stad, the 20-year drag racer, finding himself in the Porsche Owners Club now, been sim racing for 20 years and trying to pull himself a second place finish right now. Still, though, 4.5 seconds behind, almost 5 seconds behind your category leader, Jakob Abrams. And an issue for Michael Ost. More issues as he is all the way back in 7th in category. It looks like he might lose another spot there, I believe.
Indeed. Trying to see what happened. He must have been fighting his way back up through this field.
I believe that's Framheim there, closing up on the rear end.
Looks like. Did he make contact there? That's right on board with Framheim. Couldn't quite see there with the way the bridge went.
Nick, you said Code Brown earlier, right?
Yes.
What do you call this?
I don't know. I mean, leading this race, and not only leading, but you've got such a comfortable lead. It's so frustrating when something like this happens in front of you. I'm glad he didn't. Wow. That is close.
That was close. Boy, a tight one there. But man, Framheim still leading this race. Lafougue gets cut in by only about 2/10 in the last 10 minutes of this race. We're coming down to the 6-minute mark. Man, Framheim looks like he might be able to take this win away. But still, 6 minutes, especially at the end of a 30-minute race where everyone is going 120%. Man, you got to wonder how much stamina is left in some of those arms. Of course, though, these are some real-world racers.
Oh yeah, this has got to be nothing for a lot of these drivers, and it was nothing just a moment ago while we were watching the replay for BJ Fulton. He finally got around Jonathan Brell, so moved BJ Fulton in that 277 up to 4th place, although he did use his elbows quite a bit there. They made a little bit of contact as they got through, as now we're seeing Alan Stad again under pressure through Sunset Bend. It must take Paul Newton the whole lap to catch up to him, and then right through that final turn is where it comes down to the wire. But this time it's a great exit for Paul Newton. He's got a big run down into turn number 1. He's going to be looking to the inside. Maybe tucks back in line. He's not going to make a go at it here yet.
Newton in the blue making chase right now, 3rd overall in the GT4s. Stad still trying to hold him off as these two continue to lose pace to Abrams, who is now over 5.5 seconds in front of Stad, but Paul Newton continuing to try to put on that race and that pace, but still it looks like there is about half of this track where he falls behind, and maybe just under half of this track where he's able to catch back up to the rear end of Stad.
Yeah, I think he's going to have to try to get that pass done somewhere other than the final or first turn of this track. You see as they get down into the hairpin, close call and a little bit of a wiggle from Newton. So he might be struggling in a couple of these technical portions of the circuit.
Residing in Fresno, California, the 33-year-old of Paul Newton, trying to put his way up into the top 2 right now. He does have a spot on that podium for the GT4s, but you know, racers, never satisfied as we come down to 4:10 to go here in this race at Sebring.
If you ain't first, you're last. And they're right now fighting for 2nd place, which I guess still isn't first place,
last.
but it's a little bit better. Yeah, of course.
No,
Jakob
Abrams right
is
now
way
is
too
on
far
cruise
ahead.
control.
Yeah, exactly.
Even Framheim has escalated his lead now by over a second since we last checked up on him, and Lafougue trying to make chase, but it just goes to show you how guys like Lafougue, having issues earlier on in this race, have been able to recover. And even still right now, there's guys who've been around for a while. Ooh, we got some blinking headlights going on here by Paul Newton.
That is the universal racing signal for the fact that you're running out of patience, and that's a signal to Chris Lewis ahead as well. A little bit of lap traffic that might get in the way, but I think that might have been more of a signal to Alan Stad that he was wearing thin back there, and he's rightfully so wearing thin because he's only got a couple of opportunities left to do this. Oh, now Alan Stad's going to be the one flashing his lights.
Trying to catch a little bit of a draft here down the front straightaway. The slower car moves on over, lets the drivers get back to racing between Stad and Newton. Trying to find a way. Man, Newton has been behind Stad almost this entire race. Eventually, you do want to try to get to that bumper, I would think. I mean, come on, you don't want to take a guy out or anything, but just hasn't really had an opportunity to get to the bumper and make a move. I don't even mean touching it. I mean just trying to force your nose in somewhere. It doesn't seem like Newton has really found that opportunity yet.
Well, here comes the hairpin where Alan Stad goes very defensive. He knows what's up. He knows Paul Newton might have the pace over him. But just because you've got the pace over someone doesn't mean you've got the better race. Paul Newton has to sit behind just a little bit for now. He had to get on the brakes a little bit earlier than he wanted to there through the hairpin. That's allowing Alan Stad to stay out in front and control second place right now for him.
Stad and Newton are the final two drivers on the course who have not been lapped by Framheim. So far, they are the second and third place cars in the GT4 category. And not all that far behind comes the overall leader of Teddy Framheim.
Yeah, certainly. What a race Teddy's had since lap number 1 here.
And this is a difficult position for the leader. You're coming up on two drivers, not just racing for position, but for second place. And you are closing up fast as we look out the front windshield.
Well, the good thing the good news for Framheim is one, he's got straightaways here, and I think with that faster pace, the higher powered car, he looks to be able to get through. And two, even if he wasn't able to get through, he's got an 18-second gap. He can manage that a little bit, but he's going to be coming up on the white flag here after Sunset Bend for the penultimate time, and seeing that white flag, he's going to have one more lap around here at Sebring to get his first win of the season.
This race just started out chaotic. We are going to have to inspect all the cars, but that black and white car of Teddy Framheim might be the only car that does not have dents all over it. Started on pole, has led every single lap, and through that has been able to lead here overall and looking to take the win in the GT3 category.
And he might be a little bit close with that GT4 leader, Jakob Abrams, at the line. We'll have to keep an eye on that. That race might finish very quickly for both of those drivers. The only other battle I'm keeping half an eye on is for fourth place in the GT3 in the Cup class. Michael Bolton has been fending off a very damaged Bayan Salehi for much of this race. I don't think much is going to change over there, but if anything unfolds, we'll see if Salehi is able to get by him. So Framheim is coming up on... we're seeing a big run right now from Paul Newton. This might be his opportunity. He's to the inside.
Gets to the inside. Door to door through the corner. Not going to have the preferred line through here as we come to this right-hander.
Oh, that
Stad
over-under.
holds him off again.
The over-under attempt just looked a little bit awkward. I think he missed his mark by just a nose. Just a hair too late. And now he hits the curb there. Oh, I think it might be over for Paul Newton. I think he might have to settle for third. Framheim, by the way, has gotten by Abrams.
So the two leaders will classically end up coming to the line almost together to take their respective class wins, as they are both quite a ways away from the rest of the field. Of course, though, that GT4 category is a little bit tighter, as you can still see Stad and Newton fighting behind them big time, swerving left and right. Coming out of Sunset Bend for one final time, taking the win overall, Teddy Framheim takes the win for the Porsche Owners Club at Sebring. And coming through GT4, Jakob Abrams will take the class win for himself. Our two winners at Sebring coming across the line only seconds apart.
And Paul Newton tried to set something up through Sunset Bend, but he wasn't able to. Alan Stad, hats off to the driver of the 619 for holding on to that second place position. The good news for Paul Newton, he's still going to be standing strong on the podium for this race. Man, what an event we just witnessed here at Sebring.
That was an exhilarating race from turn one all the way to the end as we see more drivers come to the end. Looks like Michael Bolton got by Salehi. Back by, I should say. Or no, Salehi took that, excuse me. But how about this? Coming to the line, Nick.
Yeah, all the way down to the inside of the Ullman Straight. They had a little bit of help there, or a little bit of a disturbance in their battle from lap traffic, which was actually a faster car, Matt Hollander. Nothing wrong with what he was doing, staying out of the way. And you're going to see Paul Newton there trying to wind it up, trying to hit his apex late, but he just hit a couple of bobbles, a couple of bumps the wrong way, and ultimately he's going to end up settling for that bottom step of the podium. Still a step on the podium nonetheless.
An exciting race here in Sebring for the second race of the Porsche Owners Club Sim Racing League. We'll take a break. When we come back, we have your entire list of results, and also we'll talk to a few drivers from a chaotic race. Race number 2 of the Porsche Owners Club Sim Racing League. Another fantastic race in the Porsche Owners Club Sim Racing League. We'll take you through your entire results here as we have a new winner on the season. Teddy Franheim takes the win overall. Behind him, Gregory LaFougue was on a mission but just could not make up the amount of time that he lost after lap number 1. Thomas Boylo would ended up in 3rd. Bayan Salehi in 4th. Michael Bolton ends up in 5th. Jim Stalvik in 6th. Connor Bloom, a lot of issues, but ends up on the lead lap in 7th. Brennan Bruns in 8th. Jad Duncan recovers to 9th. And then we have our very first of the GT4 category in the top 10. Jakob Abrams takes the win and brings home an overall top 10 as well.
Yeah, he starts the season off with back-to-back wins at Daytona and Sebring. He gets the Florida sweep right in front of Alan Stad and Paul Newton. What a great battle we saw there. That was for 11th place overall on the grid. Then we've got Matt Hollander back in 13th place overall on the grid. That's going to be in the top 10 in the Cup class. Then you got back to some GT4 drivers. BJ Fulton, he got around Jonathan Brell late in this thing for 4th and 5th place. Brian Swift, a little bit of an issue trying to catch BJ Fulton midway through the race. He's going to come home 16th overall. Then you've got Michael Ost, who had a spin himself, Michael Roban, Peter Latier, and Daniel Pfefferman coming home in the top 20.
Looking through the rest of our finishing order, David Creedor coming home in 21st, Ted Falkenberg behind him, Doug Faxione in 23rd overall, Chris Lewis, Mark Rondeau, Patrick Flanagan, Ron Palmer, Eric Oviatt, Dustin Heindel, and Nielsen Lawrence end up the rest of your top 30. Dominic Cicero and John Momeyer round out the 32-car field tonight here at Sebring. Well, an exciting race, and we get to talk to the only guy who has 2 wins through 2 races on the season, Jakob Abrams of course, the first question I have to ask you, starting a little bit further back in the pack, when you go into turn one and see all of those fast cars in front of you turned around, what is your first thought trying to get around that mess?
Oh man, my heart was in my throat right there. All I was hoping to do was just get through unscathed and not get any damage. So I just really slowed that thing down, and I saw Ost had a good line through there, so I just kind of followed him, and I figured I'd be safe just tucking in behind him and going real slow, because it wasn't worth even losing 3 places to make contact right in that corner.
And the rest of the race, Dad and Newton, I mean, down the straightaways, they could see you that entire time, but you fended off basically the gap the entire time. What was the key to being so consistent?
A big part of it was, paying really close attention to when those GT3s were coming by and letting them by at a point where I wasn't going to lose a lot of time. And then beyond that, it was just, getting everything done early, get on the brakes early, get on the gas early, just really keep the car as settled as possible, because this track is just super bumpy. And I knew that was the key to being consistent here.
Coming home top 10 overall with that, but I think probably more important, back-to-back wins to open up Season 2 of the Porsche Owners Club. Who do you got to thank for this great performance here tonight?
I got to thank Works 2 Motorsport, and then, of course, the POC, for putting this on, Matt Hollander and Ron Palmer and everybody else. Really appreciate it. And, it's been a blast, and I can't wait to keep doing it.
The GT4 winner tonight, congratulations, and thanks for joining us. Jakob Abrams here takes home P1.
Thank you guys very much.
All right, now we're going to head on over. Nick is caught up with Gregory LaFougue.
I have indeed. How's it going, Greg? You come home in second place today, which is pretty amazing. Considering what happened there, take us back to lap number 1. Walk us through exactly what happened in the first turn when you guys all fanned out, and it looks like you fell back quite a few spots.
Yeah, it got a little bit messy. I think everything started. The green was super late, and Theodore was just a little bit late on his launch, and then everybody jumped on us. So it was a case of 10 cars going into the same spot at the same time, and we didn't basically none of us survived it, and I was lucky to not get too much damage, and only got back to the back of the GT4 cars, and then tried to claw my way back up from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you been able to race at this track in person before, in the real world?
Yes, I've won in IMSA actually on that track, so I know it very well. I love it. It's definitely one of the best tracks in the US. Super rewarding to drive, and races very well too, with all the braking zones.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. The reason I asked you is because of that great run you had up through the field. I thought there might be a little hidden advantage in you, because coming all the way from out, like you said, back hidden, tucked in the GT4 class, stuck behind all those slower cars. Talk about coming up through the field. It had to be quite a headache for you. A couple of scary moments, but somehow you find your way back in the top 2.
Yeah, I after Daytona, which was a little bit of a fiasco for me in terms of setup, where I just destroyed my tires after 2 laps. I really worked on the long run setup for this race, and the car was really good. So I think it was just a matter of being patient, taking the opportunities when they were there, and then just trying to move up.
Always an honor to have you come for an interview here, Greg. Congrats on that second place finish. Very impressive race for you today at Sebring. Before we let you go, is there anyone you want to give a shout out to?
Yes, I'd like to thank Matt Hollander for organizing all this stuff, and my team, Cameron Racing. We'll be racing soon, hopefully at VAR in a few weeks. So shout out to them.
Awesome stuff. Getting you back on track. Thanks for stopping by, and hopefully we'll be able to talk to you again here soon.
Thanks, guys.
That's Gregory LaFougue coming home at second place in the Cup class. But, Devin, you've caught up with a guy who finished a good 18, almost 19 seconds ahead of him, Teddy Frameheim.
Boy, definitely was fast. Now, not to discredit you or anything, but you did get a little bit of help. When did you notice that basically the entire field behind you was almost looking the other direction, Teddy.
Well, first of all, thank you, Porsche Owners Club, for putting this thing on, and you guys too for broadcasting. So I was watching, I think I saw everybody about 4 wide right behind me, and I about missed the corner watching that happen. So I saw it coming basically from corner entry and just tried to stay out of the way.
But still, Gregory LaFougue was on an absolute mission. He did get up to second, but after that, just couldn't quite seem to stick with you. What did it take throughout this race to not only continue leading, but to continue building your lead over the entire field, this entire race?
Honestly, just a lot of patience. I mean, the GT3 Cup, I'm relatively new to it, but relatively unstable under braking, not quite as much traction as you might expect. So just trying not to push it too hard in the braking zones, get solid corner exits, and hopefully at least maintain a gap. I knew after that first corner incident, that's what it was going to be, just a maintenance race.
And with all the bumps on the track as well, adding into everything that you already discussed, but what's probably the biggest thing that you learned here racing in this category tonight?
Actually, the track itself was new to me too, so I'm just kind of, I don't know, for me personally, it's patience under braking. I'm used to cars with ABS. So especially on a bumpy course like this, where you have those bumps going into a braking zone, just don't push it there, optimize corner exit, and the speed will come.
Taking home the win overall, and who you got to thank for your performance here tonight?
I suppose Porsche Owners Club, Global SimRacing Channel. I have no sponsors. I'd love to have sponsors. Thank you to my wife, and I know a couple of family members are watching too. Hopefully I gave you guys a good show.
It sure looked like it. Teddy Framheim takes home the win here at Sebring. Congrats, Teddy. And now we also have one more member with us. Nick is caught up with Paul Newton.
I have indeed. Paul Newton, who came just a little bit shy of finishing in the top 2 over in the GT4 class, but you're able to take that 217 car and still finish on the podium with it. How was that race for you?
That race was really fun. That was just a really great race. Me and Alan there, just the whole 30 minutes, we were just right up against each other, and he raced me clean the whole way. I tried to do the same for him. I outbraked myself a few times and about took him out, but I was lucky to not do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Some good, hard, clean racing there for you, too. Do you think you had a couple of setup differences maybe that kept you apart? I noticed it looked like you always seemed to close in the final turn here, Sunset Bend, and you were able to launch in just a little bit better than him, but it seemed like after that he was just able to run away for the rest of the lap.
Yeah, I was really most comfortable setting it up for the turns, which meant that on the straightaways, I had enough to get up to his door, but I never really got close enough to steal the turn away from him.
Yeah, absolutely. Great stuff there. Following closely with the real world IMSA schedule, we head to Mid-Ohio next in a couple of weeks' time. A little bit of a smaller track there, but maybe some similar characteristics. How are you feeling there to carry on your successful start to the season?
I feel pretty good about Mid-Ohio. I think it's one of my stronger tracks. My first ever online race was at Mid-Ohio, so it's a little special to me in that way.
Awesome. Hope to see you perform there. Always been one of my favorite personal tracks in the real world, getting to catch a couple races over there. Before we let you go, though, today, Paul, once again, congrats on that podium. And is there anyone you want to thank for this great performance you had there today?
Thank you. I want to thank Peel's California Mandarins and Fowler Packing, and I want to say hi to everybody watching it.
Awesome stuff. Put on a heck of a show for them. Yes, we definitely want to thank all of the fans that came out and watched this awesome POC Sim Racing League race today. Paul, thanks for stopping by. Hopefully, like you said, we get to talk to you up there in the Buckeye State.
You got it.
That's Paul Newton coming home third place today in the GT4. Devin, you've got some closing words for us before we say goodbye to our fine fans and racers here today at Sebring.
Well, I think the first thing to say is we have not been anything short of excitement here in the Porsche Owners Club Sim Racing League. But of course, we got to give a big thanks to the sponsors who are making this possible, including Sunset Mortgage, Octavio Tequila, and Century Financial Consultants. And of course, a big thank you to the Porsche Owners Club for setting this all up and letting us broadcast it, and thanks to the companies that provide the software and the hardware for our broadcast listed here on your screen. An additional thanks goes to June Lalonde, who provides our wonderful music. See the screen for how to get a hold of her for more of her great work. And of course, a big thanks to the team today, including Nick and our producer, Joe Peak. If you'd like to find out more about GSRC, including upcoming races, you can find it at globalsimracingchannel.com. Or you can check out our social media on Twitter at GSR Channel, on Facebook at Global Sim Racing Channel, and Instagram at GSRC_Graham. And if you'd like to support the channel, go check out our merchandise store at gsrc.storeenvy.com. The link is in the description below. And don't forget to head on over to our YouTube page, hit that big old red subscribe button so you never miss a moment here on the Global Sim Racing Channel. And as Nick mentioned, our next race for the Porsche Owners Club Sim Racing League will be at the Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course. That will be on June 15th, 2 Mondays from tonight. We also have upcoming races for many other series listed on your screen right now. Be sure to check those out. Mark them down on your calendar for a lot more fun here on GSRC. Until next time, guys, race clean, race hard, and we'll see you on the track.